What did I just say? 36% less fuel cost for 76% less energy used. That doesn't add up. People talk about EVs being so cheap to fuel. If electricity as a fuel is incredibly way more expensive than gasoline.
Hello EV enthusiasts, and welcome back to another EV John YouTube channel video. You join me in my driveway here in Lansdale area, Pennsylvania, where I'm about to go on a 300-mile round trip, day trip with my family to see my in-laws, the grandparents. And I just wanted to make a quick video, not a full road trip style video, but just maybe a quicker video of the trip and maybe shedding some insight into why am I going to take an EV? What does it look like to take a 300-mile trip in a car that can't do 300 miles on the highway in one shot? So what does it look like with charging? There's no charging at my destination, so there's going to have to be a supercharging stop. What does that look like? So let's go through the details. Let's get into it, and let's see what a 300-mile, 5-hour round trip, day trip looks like with no charging infrastructure at the destination. And always, before we get started, let's take a look at the ride for the day. We're going to be taking the 2024 Tesla Model Y, which is currently top charging. It's about 9 in the morning right now on a Sunday. We're going to leave at 9:30. When I got up around 7:15 today, I just pushed the charging up to 100%. So this thing started to charge from 80 to 100 at 7:15. So we'll have a full charge when we're ready to go, and we will need every bit of those electrons today. But I think this is going to be an interesting video because why are we going to take this car versus that car? The Tiguan here, our trusty family hauler, the 2020 Volkswagen Tiguan, can 100% do a 300-mile, 5 hours of driving round trip without stopping. It'll give us comparable space and comfort to the Tesla. So why am I going to take the Tesla? Why am I not going to take the gas car? We could even take our old friend Geraldine out there, my daughter's car. That was my old car, our 2013 Passat. That could also do the ride and then some. It's got a big gas tank and it's very fuel efficient. So let's take a look at the route. Let's go through the trip. And at the end, I think I'm going to share my thoughts of why EV. And I think I have some good reasons. I also think the answer is not for everyone. I'm a big believer, as much as I love EVs, I'm a big believer that there is the right tool for every job, and we have multiple tools in our toolbox. So I have an EV, we have a gas car, we have another gas car. Every car has its own purpose and its job. If I had different purposes for cars, maybe I'd have a pickup truck, maybe I'd have a bigger SUV, but these three tools are what we need for our family. And this tool right here, our Tesla Model Y, is going to be the tool of choice for today's trip. All right, so now you join me in the Model Y. You see we're at 99% right now on the charge. We have 40 minutes remaining. And that's because, as the car hits 100% and gets closer to 100%, the charge rate slows down. So we're seeing 15 out of 40 amps right now. My home charging, I have 40 amps available at 240. And right now we're only pulling 4 kilowatts. So, that's it. We're going kind of slow as the car kind of top charges and hits 100% across all of the cells in the pack. And that's why, like I said, I got up at 7:15. I bumped it up to 100. I did try to use the scheduling feature. I think I had some conflicting schedules. You can, in a Tesla, say, hey, just be charged to this level by this time and it'll take care of the rest. But for some reason today, or last night, it didn't seem to want to do that. So I just said, you know what, who cares? I'll just get up and bump it up. So that's what I did. But let's take a look at the route. So looking at the route, we can see that our route will take us from where I live, just a bit north and west of Philadelphia, all the way across Pennsylvania on the turnpike, up until we get to Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. That's where my in-laws live. They've been there for a couple of years now. Beautiful town, college town. So we're going to head out that way. You'll notice on the way out, there's no charging spots. There's no charging stops at all. We'll leave at 100%. We'll arrive at about 45%, which is pretty easy. But for those of you who are good at math, you'll notice that if it takes me 55% to get there, you'll know that it will take 55% to get home, and 45% is not 55%. So we're going to have to stop on the way home. There is no charging at the destination. I think I'll talk about that when I get there. I would love to see some DC fast charging options in Shippensburg itself. There's a few around there, but nothing like right in town. I also don't have charging at my in-laws' house. They don't have any charging installed, nothing available. I'm not going to go ahead and install that at their house, as convenient as that would be. So this is the reality of a family day trip in an EV. And like I said, our goal today is just to take a look at what that looks like. And you can decide for yourself if that's something for you or not. We'll take a look when we get back at the energy used, the cost for the energy, and maybe the time it takes adding to our trip, or maybe not adding to our trip. So let's load up the car, let's get going, and we'll check in on the way. All right, we got the Model Y all loaded up here. Let's take a look. We had some problems closing the trunk. You know, the Model Y, with its aerodynamic fastback shape, doesn't allow for big square cargo. So the last, I'd say, small cooler that we have for them wouldn't quite fit. But as EV drivers, we don't give up. We always find another way. So what I did with that last cooler, as you'll see here, is I've just fit it into the frunk. Plenty of room for that last cooler. I still have my travel bag down there with my mobile charger and my CCS1 adapter. So everything is loaded up. We're good to go. Let's hit the road and we'll check in on the way. Okay, just checking in about 2/3 of the way through our trip. We've been cruising at around 75 to 80 miles an hour on autopilot, smooth sailing so far all the way. You can see it's about 80 degrees outside, so not too warm, not too cold, great conditions, not too windy. We have gained some elevation and we've kept the speed up, which is why you can see our efficiency is just below 300 watt hours per mile, or that's about 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. So pretty efficient, but not as efficient as we could be. We have about 45 miles of driving left, and we're expected to arrive around 37%. So maybe a little lower state of charge on arrival than we expected. But I have been, like I said, pushing the speed a little bit because we're keeping up with traffic. So let's keep going on the drive, and we'll check in when we get there. Okay, we have arrived at Grammy and Pappy's house in Shippensburg. As you can see here, we've done 151 miles, 44.8 kilowatt hours of electricity used, and we have 297.1 watt hours per mile of efficiency, which is, like I said, just a little bit better than 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. So decent efficiency. One thing I do want to comment on here, we arrived with 35% state of charge. And if I look at the map, well, let me back up here. 35% state of charge, and if I change that to miles, rated miles is 102 miles left. So I want to say that EVs are great, and this is a 300-mile rated car, but if I've driven 151 miles and I have 100 left, that says we're getting about 250 miles on the highway. But if you look at the energy graph here, based on the last 100 miles, my projected range is 87 miles. So if you add that 87 to my 150, you're at like 237, 240. So that's what you can expect in decent warm weather conditions. 81 degrees here. You can expect 240 miles of range on this car at highway speeds. That's what you're going to get. So the EPA rating is one thing, but real world highway speeds, elevation changes, wind, traffic, all of that go together. And again, you're looking at 230, 240 miles of real world highway range, which is fine. Now, in my case, I have another 151 miles to go home today at the end of the day. I only have 87 miles of range left. So we will use the route planner on the way home. We will see what supercharging looks like and how that works. You can see that it's not going to be that big of a deal at all. I also want to show you in terms of my drive. You can see here for the trip, I do have some tips here, and the speed it actually really contributed to my extra range usage here, right? So the car is telling me that If I had kept at 70 or below, I would have saved 22.5 miles of range, or switched back to percent, I would have saved 8% of range if I had used, if I kept my speed, at the speed limit. The reality is nobody's driving 70 miles an hour on the highway here. Everything is 75, 80, or even more. And so that's what we do. Good to have this information, though, just for good knowledge and good planning. If we were running low on range, we always could reduce our speed, but I knew we were going to have to make a charging stop anyway. There wasn't any big benefit for us to reduce our speed, so we just kept up with traffic. We arrived here with 35% to go, and I think we're going to be just fine. So stay tuned. I'm going to check in when we're done. One thing I'm also going to say before we kind of park it here for a few hours, I'm going to turn Sentry mode off. There's no reason to have Sentry mode on using battery power while we're kind of at the in-laws house here. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead to my menu here, and I'm going to make sure that we have cabin overheat protection turned either off or with no AC. And what that'll do is it'll just reduce energy usage while the car is parked. There's no need to run that, to use that energy, and that'll make sure that we just have, we're the most efficient. We're not using any more energy than we need, and we'll have the most range when it's time to leave to get us to kind of the furthest supercharger away. So that's what we're looking at. We'll check in again when it's time to go, and we'll see where we are there. Okay, ready to go now. You can see we're still at 35% state of charge, right, the same when we parked. And all I had to do was put in my address, and the car will know how much charge it needs, and it tells us where we need to go to supercharge. It's actually recommending this Grayson Road supercharger in Harrisburg, PA. I might actually stop at a different one that I like better, that has a Sheets next to it, which is nicer amenities. So I'll probably try that. But easy peasy, just tell it where you want to go. The car does the rest, and we'll check in when we get to the supercharger. Okay, we've arrived at the supercharger. I had the navigation take us to a different one here in Carlisle, the Sheets in Carlisle. It's a great place to stop. It's really right directly on our route home from Shippensburg. They have plenty of food and good bathrooms inside, and then multiple superchargers right here. You can see down the line with 2 other Teslas charging right now. We arrived here at 25% state of charge, and you can see if we left now, we'd get home at negative 32%. So we're going to go ahead and plug in. Actually, top tip, if anyone in your party is going to be staying in the car, the best thing to do is just to put the car into camp mode. That way, whoever stays in the car can still use the screen. Walk away lock is disabled. Climate control remains active. And this is the best way to leave somebody in the car while you're going to run in. So we're going to go do that. I'm going to plug in first. Let's go do that now. Coming here, grabbing the handle. Looks like I parked a little bit further away, but it'll still reach. This is a V2 supercharger, so not the fastest. It's not a 250 kilowatt, but a 150 kilowatt charger. But honestly, for the state of charge we're at and the amount of juice we need, this is plenty. V2s have a slightly longer handshake time as well. As we can see here, it's probably going to be more 10 seconds than 6. But supercharging has started. We have the green light flashing. I see the notification on my phone. So let's go ahead and grab some snacks inside. And I bet you by the time we're done, it'll be time to go and the car will be ready. All right, back at the car after grabbing snacks and getting our snacks settled, and the car's taking a little bit longer to charge than I thought, probably because we're at a V2 supercharger instead of a V3. But you can see that we are at 56% state of charge, currently getting 71 kilowatts at a 56% state of charge. Again, not the fastest, but it'll get us there. 10 minutes or less and we'll be ready to resume our trip. So we'll just go and wait for the car to tell us it's time to go. If we were to leave now, we would get home at negative 2%. I could always back down the speed, but that's a little bit too close for me when we can just sit here for a few more minutes and get like a good 10% buffer when we get it home. So that's what we'll shoot for, and we'll check in when it's time to go. Checking back in here, we just got the message that we have enough energy to continue our trip. So we'll just hit okay. We're ready to go home. We plugged in at 5:03 and now it's currently 5:22. So let's just round up and call that 20 minutes on the hook. We plugged in, I can't remember, maybe 25%, and we're at about 70% here. So pretty good. I did get messaging in here that the charge limit, the charge rate was limited by the station. I saw that on my app and also on the screen, so that was interesting. We're still getting 74 kilowatts at 69%, which, not as fast as we would love. And we were here about 10 minutes longer than I expected. But all in all, a 20-minute stop, 10 minutes of which were used for snacks. Not so bad. I'm going to go ahead and unplug, and then we'll check in when we get home. And as we unplug here, one thing I like about this station, besides its convenient location, is the fact that this sheets here, they are kind enough to provide, which someone has littered next to, and we have a lot of cigarette butts there, which is really too bad, but at least we have windshield washing station and trash can right here, which is really nice for all of us that are here charging up. Okay, you join me here back in my house in the driveway where we started the day. It is currently 9:49 p.m. So we've actually been home about 2 hours. I had to go in the house, have some late dinner, needed to unload the car, that kind of thing, see the dogs. But now here I am. I've gathered my thoughts that we'll talk about in a minute, and I just wanted to go through the drive home, or actually the drive for the day, and then I'll share my final thoughts at the end. So looking at the Shippensburg trip here in the trip card, we drove just over 300 miles today, 91 kilowatt hours of power used, and 299.1 watt hours per mile, which is pretty decent efficiency. It's about 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour, so not too bad at all. But that was the drive, and yeah, on the way home, I did push the speed a little bit, again, keeping up with traffic, and I could have saved some range if I had kept the speed below 70, but we talked about that earlier, and I was just going to keep up with traffic. I wasn't too worried about efficiency, only because I knew that I needed to charge at some point anyway.
All right, you join me back here at my home office where I'd like to go through some of my final thoughts for the day. It's actually a couple days later. I was pretty tired at the end of the trip. When we got home, it was a couple hours late till I could film the recap. A couple hours later. And this week we've actually had a lot going on, dealing with the aftermath of a grid power surge that took out a couple of appliances at my home and also my HVAC system. So that's been a joy this week. Comment down below if you want to hear more about that in another video. But I wanted to go through some of my final thoughts for the Shippensburg day trip. I think this is a pretty good example of what it's like to live real life, real driving, real world with an EV, and can you do it? I know a lot of people think that they're for short range only. I use my EV for everything. Long range trips, short range trips, you name it. So what I'd like to do here is just look at the numbers and talk about the trip and compare it to what the trip would have been like from an energy usage and a cost usage, and maybe even a time usage if I had taken my Volkswagen Tiguan gas car instead of the Tesla, which we've done many times before we had the Tesla. So let's talk about that for a minute. Before we get into that though, one quick note. I think I arrived home with something like 13%, and Testify shows that I used about 89.15 kilowatt hours of energy. And then later that night when I went to do my recap of the energy used, which you saw in the previous clip, the car was showing 9% state of charge, and I think something like 91 kilowatt hours of energy used. That was interesting to me. My car arrived home at a 13% state of charge. It put itself in low power mode, which is a new feature for Tesla that I'm not really familiar with. And I think what it did though was, like it does many times, as soon as I got home and parked, I think it hopped on my Wi-Fi and uploaded tons and tons of data to the cloud, right? Tesla does this to help train the fleet, to help improve FSD and autopilot, which is, I think, a good thing that every car's experience can help improve the fleet. But I think that might be what used that extra 4% and an extra couple kilowatt hours of energy. And I also think that maybe after running the air conditioning or the cooling system, sometimes maybe it uses the fans to kind of dry that out. So that might have been that discrepancy. So as we get into the numbers here, we're going to use what I found from Testify, which reflects the actual drive. So quick summary, we drove 300 miles today, just a little bit over. We averaged 293 watt hours per mile, which is about 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour, which is decent efficiency. We had 3 grown adults. We had a car full of stuff. We drove real world highway speeds. It was pretty warm out during the day. And we used 89.15 kilowatt hours of energy, like I said before. We left home in the morning at 100%. We arrived back home at 13%, and we needed just a 20-minute supercharger stop on the way home, which was a little bit longer than I expected. And I don't know if that's because the car didn't seem to precondition on the way there, even though I navigated there. But I also saw a message in my app that the charger was derated, right? So the car was asking for more. So I don't think it was derated much. 20 minutes is maybe a little longer than I expected, but real world, that's what we had. Um, Total cost of the day, including the 35 kilowatt hours from the supercharger and the rest charging at home, that equaled to be just under $23 of fuel, which isn't that bad. If I took my Tiguan, we would have used about $36 in fuel. So that's thinking about what gas costs here in the Philadelphia area and the average fuel economy I've observed on that Tiguan over the 80,000 miles that we've had it. So $36 for the Tiguan versus 23 for the Tesla, meaning we used about 36% less fuel cost, which is pretty nice. From an efficiency standpoint, the Tesla using 89.15 kilowatt hours of energy, that equates to 2.65 gallons of gas. So we know that a gallon of gas has about 33.7 kilowatt hours of energy in it. That means my 89.15 kilowatt hours of energy used is 2.65 gallons of gas. The Tiguan would have used about 11 gallons of gas in that same trip. So the Tesla used 76% less energy to do our 300-mile trip than the Tiguan would have. That's a pretty cool stat. I think that's also an interesting way to uncover a fact that people don't really talk about much. I've known about this for a while, and I haven't really thought of a good way to illustrate this, but I think it just kind of surfaced itself. And please comment below and let me know if you'd like me to do more on this topic. Electricity, let me back up. People talk about EVs being so cheap to fuel. Buy an EV, you'll save so much on gas. It makes up your payment or close thereof, right? Very, very true. But let's pause for a second. If electricity as a fuel is incredibly way more expensive than gasoline. And I think where EVs win in terms of their lower cost of fuel is in the fact that they're so efficient. Gas cars waste so much energy giving it off as heat in the brakes, in the engine, in the exhaust, and everything. EVs just don't do that. Let's look at this trip. What did I just say? 36% less fuel cost for 76% less energy used. That doesn't add up, right? That shows you how much more electricity costs than gasoline does. So that, I think, is a wild topic. I'd love to kind of dig into that more. So let me know if you want more about that. And then the last topic I want to cover is why? Why did I take the Tesla instead of the Tiguan, right? Why did I do that? I had to stop and supercharge. And, why did I even deal with that? If the Tiguan could have made it out and back in one go of it, it would have been simpler. Well, let me tell you what. First is safety. Especially on a family trip, I always want to take the safest car that we can. Every single car that I own, all 3 of them, are safe cars. I would drive any of them across country without a doubt. However, the Tesla is objectively the safest one that we have. It has the most advanced driver safety equipment. It's got the best crash test ratings. It's the safest car. So that's the first reason. From a comfort perspective, the Tesla and the Tiguan have about the same footprint, but the Tesla's cabin is pinched a little bit, right, for aerodynamics. So I would give the Tiguan the win on comfort a little bit. I personally find them about equally comfortable. Maybe the Tesla, maybe even a little more comfortable for me, but maybe equal. My family prefers the Tiguan, but they're willing to kind of tough it out, right, in the Tesla. So that I'll call that a wash. And the last I'll say is just fun and desire, right? The Tesla is just, for me as a driver, a much more fun car to drive than the Tiguan. I think our Volkswagen Tiguan is just a fantastic all-around family car, It's been so good for us. We've driven it everywhere since we bought it new in 2020. But the Tesla for me is just more fun. I like the way it handles. I like the acceleration. I like the smoothness and the quietness of it. And at the end of the day, I think there's the right tool for every job. And at the end of the day, freedom is about doing what you want to do. So for me, when I go through that matrix of decisions about which car in my driveway do I want to take for the trip, Tesla is the clear winner. For my neighbor, they might choose something different, right? A lot of people would choose the Tiguan or a gas car or something else. And you do you, right? This is great. There's a different tool for every job. There's a different preference, for everyone. So I say, take the car that you want. For me, it was the Tesla, and what I wanted to do today was just illustrate what it was like as an EV driver to take a car on a long day trip like that. 5 hours on the road, 300 miles with the family, with gear, real world speeds. What does that look like? And now we know. Pretty simple. And the only downside I'd say between the two cars is the Tesla took a little bit more time. We did have to stop for 20 minutes and supercharge. To that, I will also argue that maybe it wasn't really a black and white 20-minute difference, though, because while my Tiguan could have made it out and back without having to refuel, that car has to go to work the next day, right? We came home Sunday night. That car has to turn around and go to work and has a work week ahead of it. So usually when we do that round trip to Shippensburg for the day, it will end with a fuel stop on the way home. And that means it's late at night, we're tired, we have to stop at some gas station in town and, spend, 5-6 minutes fueling up the car. Not a big deal, but that does change the dynamic of that 20-minute stop that we had to make, right? If you layer in a bathroom stop on the way home with a 5-minute fuel stop on the way home, compared to a one single 20-minute supercharger stop, let's call that a wash too. So anyway, enough rambling for me. I just wanted to share my thoughts on this trip overall. I hope you found some good value in it. If you have an EV, you maybe are knowing this stuff already. If you're considering buying an EV, maybe this gives you some insight into the process. And if you do decide to buy an EV and you do decide to buy a Tesla and you don't already have a referral code, please consider using my referral code. It's going to be in the comments, in the pinned comment, and it'll be in the description below. That'll save you some money and it'll help me and the channel out, and it's always much appreciated. So anyway, there's my thoughts. Thanks so much for joining me on this adventure, and looking forward to the next one. Talk to you later.